We recognize that the Champlain Valley Unitarian Universalist Society gathers on the land of the Western Abenaki people. We respect the Abenaki spiritual relationship to this land, and we seek to honor their living traditions. We hope to learn from them how we can respect Mother Earth and each other.
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to CVUUS, our remote service on this Sunday, this first Sunday in March. Have you been out yet today? If you live here in Addison County, it's just a beautiful day. It's chilly, but it is chilly in the winter on beautiful days. I think we've had more sun this winter than I can remember. It's been a beautiful winter, I think, and I don't like winter, as many of you know. We've had so much sunlight. It's a blessing, a pandemic blessing. We are headed for spring this month. It's a time of hope and renewal and new beginnings, a time of optimism, albeit cautious optimism. Winter often leaves dramatically with a final blast or two. We've had a year of pandemic. I've had my 2 COVID shots. I'm hopeful for a better time when I can gather again with friends and family. I'm Carl Lindholm, for those of you who don't know me. I'm a member of the worship team here at CVUUS, and I serve today as the worship associate for our minister, Barnaby Feeder. Today is our stewardship service and spring pledge drive kickoff. I do want to make a special thanks to Rick Hawley, our musical accompanist. Rick is one of my closest friends. We met at Middlebury College as 18-year-olds on the first day when we were freshmen, and we have been friends ever since. Rick lives in Ripton with his wife, Molly, an artist. He's an educator and a writer, a prolific writer. If you're interested in his work, he has a web page that you can get to easily, Richard A. Hawley. As members and friends of the Champlain Valley Unitarian Universalist Society, committed to the Unitarian principles, Unitarian Universalist principles, we strive to be an inclusive and welcoming community that sustains a liberal religious tradition. We aspire to be visible and active on behalf of social justice and environmental responsibility. We nurture and empower each other at all ages on our spiritual journeys, and we reach out to the larger communities of which we are a part. That's our mission. And I think it's important to repeat it now and then to be reminded of what we're after here. We do have some pathways to connection. I would urge you to read the weekly blast. It comes on Wednesdays, and it's much more thorough than we have time to relate here. Just a couple of highlights. Every second Monday of the month, we do a Charter House dinner. And if you'd like to be a part of the prep team, a part of that activity, do contact Alan Moore. Also, this Tuesday in our sanctuary, at our sanctuary, we will be hosting the regular monthly blood drive of the American Red Cross. The Legion, of course, where it's usually held, is being used now. That's where I got my COVID shot. And so we're happy to do that. So this Tuesday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., there'll be a blood drive at our place. There's a dire need for blood. If you have a milestone or a passage that you haven't communicated to Barnaby earlier this week, do put it in the chat room, and we'll make sure that we find it there. And I do hope you will stay with us for the coffee hour at the end of the service. The call to worship today is adapted from the words of the Reverend A. Powell Davies, a minister during the 1940s and 50s at All Souls Unitarian Church in Washington, D.C. None of our private worlds is big enough for us to live a wholesome life in. We need the wider world of joy and wonder, of purpose and venture, of toil and tears. What are we, any of us, until we draw together and find the meaning of our lives in one another, dissolving our fears in each other's courage, making music together, and lighting torches to guide us through the dark? We belong together. Let our hearts be open, and what we would receive from others, let us give. For what is given still remains to bless the giver when the gift is love. Now, the chalice lighting. Please read along with me the words that scroll on your screen. Flame, friend of our most ancient ancestors, we kindle you now to make you visible at this time. Yet, in truth, you burn always in the unique worth of each person, in the imagination, in the turning of the heart to sorrow or joy, in the call to hope, and in the call to justice. Burn bright before us, burn bright within us.
Barnaby was having a little trouble. There we
I'm
go.
unmuted now, so thank you very much. This month we're sharing our offering with two Abenaki groups, and we're starting with the Vermont Abenaki Artists Association. I've been able to have conversations this week with Vera Longtoe Sheehan, who's the head of that association. She's going to be with us next week for a testimony about what involvement with this group means to her. But meanwhile, just to introduce them, I'm going to say that the association was founded in 2013 by Chief Don Stevens, who was our guest speaker last week, and 3 other Abenaki tribal leaders to help Abenaki artists gain rights to market their work as Abenakis, as recognized American Indian tribes under federal laws. And they now represent 280 artists, performers, educators, and researchers. So the Vermont Abenaki Artists Association's mission is to promote regional indigenous arts, artists, culture, and to provide a central place for these artists to share their ideas and their professional development. It creates cultural events, education programs, exhibitions, and curriculum materials that are used throughout the United States and even overseas. And they're working to preserve and pass down traditional Abenaki arts and crafts, but also to create new ones that represent the ideas that came out of those traditions. So I invite you to be as generous as you can be today in your support of this effort to support the artists of the people who lived here before we did and their descendants.
Good morning.
Morning.
My story today is called Sustaining the Tree of Life, written by Lynn Gardner. And sustaining means supporting. So it's like supporting the tree of life. This tree stood in the middle of the village. Its trunk was so large that it took 6 people holding hands to reach around it. And the roots were strong and wide, and its branches spread out over the village square, offering shelter from the rain or shade from the summer sun. Its fruit was juicy and sweet and plentiful. And the people of the village loved the tree. Children played beneath it and climbed its lowest branches. Young people knew that if you whispered your dreams to the tree, they were more likely to come true. People who proclaimed their love or their friendship for one another underneath its branches found that those relationships were very nourishing and loving. And elders discovered that their sweetest memories could be counted on when they were near the great tree. The tree had been witness to so much, and when the breezes blew through the leaves, one could hear echoes of generations, laughter and conversation and dreams and prayers and songs. And animals loved the tree. There were rabbits that lived in burrows underneath the roots. There were squirrels who lived in the branches and birds who flew in to eat all the fruit. The tree just buzzed with life. So one day, a traveling merchant arrived in the village, and he rested in the shade and he ate 2 pieces of the fruit. This fruit is incredible. I would like to have some to sell in the next villages that I visit. Who owns this tree? No one owns this tree, replied a villager. If anything, we belong to it. Well, if no one owns the tree, then no one will mind if I pick the fruit. And he began to fill a basket. I mind, said the villager. And today I am the keeper of the tree. What? What do you mean, keeper of the tree? Well, we each take our turn being here with the tree. We could never own it, but we're here as protectors, as sustainers. That's ridiculous. This tree doesn't need you. You could just take what you need and take what you want, and the tree would be fine. The tree would continue. This tree isn't like that. We don't come here to just take from it, even though we get a lot. We're keepers of the tree because this is where we're nourished. This is where some of our most precious memories are, and where our people have dreamed. And this is where we remember who we want to become. Well, you may think this tree is very special, but it still doesn't need you to sit with it. I mean, that's crazy. The tree itself might not need me to sit here, but what about all the other people who come by? Just this morning, I sat with a woman whose heart was heavy with worry. And if I hadn't been here, she would have had to carry that worry alone. And this afternoon, a tired couple came by and they rested with me. They said that they had been looking for a place like this. And then an elder came by and we sat and we watched the birds in the branches together. And now you're here. And you were confused about what this tree is and how to be with it. So imagine if you had arrived and you hadn't found anyone here to talk with, you might have continued thinking that everything you do is all about you. But luckily for you, my friend, I am here to let you know that when you care for the tree of life, it becomes about so much more than just you. And the merchant sat for a while in the shade, thinking about these ideas that felt new and a little challenging. And as the sun went down, he picked up his bag and he headed out of town, singing a song that he hadn't thought of in years. And on his way, he shared a smile with each person he met, and his heart felt strangely light and joyful. And the people of the village? Well, they continued to sustain the tree of life, to care for one another, and to share their gifts with grace and gratitude. May it be so for each of us. Here is where we remember where we all come from. Here is where we remember who we want to become.
I now invite you into a time of silent prayer or meditation, whatever works for you, to get in touch with where your heart is this morning, where there's so much news of all sorts for people in our congregation and, of course, in the wider community and in the world. It's things that have so much to do with the spirit that we bring to this worship this morning. And I invite you into silence to touch those deeper feelings.
Why don't we have video?
So Margie, I'm not seeing the video.
No, it's Brett and Carl.
Yeah, so I'd like to see, I didn't see the video for our silent period.
Interestingly, we didn't have one on the order of service.
Weird.
So I just decided to show black. I'm sorry I wasn't muted. I didn't mean for you to hear me walking around while I went to get the little chime. But I was hoping that people could meditate to the black. And here's that chime again.
Okay.
So Brett and Carl, take it away.
Oh,
So we just talked.
you're on, yes.
All right. Okay. I'm not used to how this system works. Greetings, friends. The Bound for Joy canvas has begun, and under the circumstances, I'd like to dedicate what we do this spring to Bob Johnson, a great friend of mine and a great friend of the congregation. So we set a goal of $350,000 and 100% participation. It's been, as everyone knows, a difficult year, and there is uncertainty that lies ahead. I feel like the past year has conspired to pull us apart, to keep us, separate us, and keep us away from one another. But I think by contributing to maintain the programs of CVUUS, the worship programs, the music programs, the religious exploration programs, the service programs, by contributing to maintain those programs and by helping them become what they need to be in the coming year, is a way to buck that trend of being pushed apart and, in fact, to pull together. We started the canvas by delivering goodie bags with canvas info to every single CVUUS household. Gratitude to bakers and drivers and people who helped that happen. And by the way, we haven't quite got to Heinsberg and Lincoln yet, so don't despair if you're up that way. But we did that precisely as a way of pulling people together, of making people feel seen, of seeing people. It's wonderful to see you all here, and having seen some of you over the past few days. What happens next is that we've divided you all into groups of 8 or 9 people, which we're calling villages. And each of the villages has a leader. And so within the next few days, you'll hear from your village leader, who can answer your questions, help you pledge online, get you a paper pledge form if you need one, and also provide another opportunity to get together for a community, to pull together in a community. And again, you'll have a resource dedicated to you if you have questions. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for pulling together.
Now, our theme, Bound for Joy. We're bound for joy. We thought it suggested a train bound for joy with a destination of bringing us together in person pretty soon in the spaces that allow us to do the good work of CVUUS and to support one another along the way. Now, Bound for Joy, the train image, it brought to mind the Woody Guthrie song. Do you know this train? This train is bound for glory, this train. So we asked our brilliant wordsmith, Ted Shy, to adapt the words to our purpose. And we asked the brilliant banjo picker and singer, Chris Prickett, to sing it. So here on the first Sunday of our canvas is a gift to you from them and us.
One, two, three. train is bound for joy now, this train. This train is bound for joy now, this train. Every person find your joy now, this train is the real McCoy now, this train is bound for joy now, this train. This train needs you to hop on this train. This train needs you to plop on this train. While we move or when we stop on every vale or mountain top on this train, needs you to hop on this train. Climb aboard our canvas train now, won't you? Climb aboard our canvas train, why don't you? Despite pandemic stress and strain now, our communal love remains now. Climb aboard our canvas train now, won't you? We will soon be all together, this train. In the dark or stormy weather, this train. This train can't wait to gather face to face the way we'd rather. This train will stay together, this train. This train has canvas vision, this train. Our 2021 edition, this train. Heartfelt gifts provide ignition, helping to support our mission. This train has canvas vision, this train. This song don't need no chorus, this song. This song don't need no chorus, this song. All these verses passing o'er us like the train of joy before us. This train don't need no chorus, this song. This train is bound for joy now, this train. This train is bound for joy now, this train. Every person find your joy now, this train is the real McCoy now, this train is bound for joy now, this train. This train is optimistic, this train. Honest-eyed and idealistic, this train. Loving God or atheistic, this train's love is futuristic. This train is optimistic, this train. This train is open-minded, this train. This train is never blinded, this train. This train is open-minded just the way we all designed it. This train is open-minded, this train. This train is open-hearted, this train. This train is open-hearted, this train. This train is open-hearted, finishing the work we've started. This train is open-hearted, this train. Oh, this train is bound for joy now, this train. This train is bound for joy now, this train. Every person find your joy now, this train is the real McCoy now, this train is bound for joy now, this train.
How about that? How about that? My goodness, I'm ready. I'm getting on the train. Climb aboard. Okay, it's time for our readings. Although Mary Oliver never identified as a UU, her poetry was published by our Beacon Press. She spoke at our 2006 General Assembly, and her words appear at several places in our hymnal. Many UUs regard her beautiful nature-centered poems as supremely wise and moving commentary on what is sacred. But she had little to say about who we are collectively, our subject for today. So Reverend Barnaby has a few questions for you. He wants to scatter through one of her most famous poems. Some questions you might want to ask. Is the soul solid like iron? Is the soul solid like iron? Or is it tender and breakable, like the wings of a moth in the beak of an owl? Who has it and who doesn't?
And what happens when we souls congregate in love, peace, and sympathy?
I keep looking around me. The face of the moose is as sad as the face of Jesus. The swan opens her white wings slowly. In the fall, the black bear carries leaves into the darkness. One question leads to another. Does it have a shape like an iceberg, like the eye of a hummingbird?
Do souls traveling together have a different shape, like an iceberg on a historic journey, or a shape-shifting flock of hummingbird eyes?
Does the soul have one lung, like the snake and the scallop?
How does a gathering of souls breathe, or feed, or know itself?
Why should I have it and not the anteater who loves her children? Why should I have it and not the camel? Come to think of it, what about the maple trees? What about the blue iris? What about the little stones, all the little stones sitting alone in the moonlight? What about roses and lemons and their shining leaves? What about the grass?
Yes, what about how this congregation takes its place among all souls?
The second reading. How do you figure out how heavy a whale is? Now, how do you figure out how heavy a whale is? You have to take it to a railway station. Barnaby, that Barnaby, he's a wascally wabbit, isn't he? You take it to a railway station. What? You're not on our Bound for Joy pledge train yet? Did you hear about the British train and the motorway that stopped in at a pub? The British train and a motorway stopped in at a pub. The bartender asked, "What will you have?" And the train said, "A pint for me and one for the road." Hey, Barnaby, how many more of these train jokes do you want?
Well, thank you, Carl. Maybe I'll take it from here. Those of you who read my reverent weekend greeting, looking forward to today's stewardship sermon, may have been taken aback by the truly awful train jokes that I gave Carl as our second reading to introduce this sermon. Carl's reaction when he got them, he told me, was, "I'll look for some better ones." When it comes to his job as a worship associate, Carl's like the train conductor punching tickets. You got to hand it to him. But then he discovered, as I had, that there really aren't any great train jokes. What I'm hoping for here, I explained to him, is very simple. I want us to be clear that talking about our near future as a congregation in such an uncertain environment requires a generous sense of humor about our ability to make predictions. We're looking forward to hosting the annual Rhubarb Festival the first Saturday in June, most likely in a format similar to last year. We're looking forward to having the annual meeting the next day online, but also perhaps with a limited number of pre-registered members welcome to attend in the sanctuary with substantial distancing and other safety measures. We're beginning to brainstorm about a June 13th flower communion in which we would focus on outside activities, but perhaps feature the congregational bouquet displayed in the sanctuary with people having a chance to file by to perhaps to live music before everyone gets their share of the bouquet to take home, as we always do with the flower communion. We've begun brainstorming about what kind of summer program we will have this year, and what chances might be for on-site, if not indoor, children's RE in the fall, because it's still not clear when the children will get their shots, their vaccines. We're approaching all of this in the spirit of climbing on a train bound for more joyful times. But we know that there may well be station stops along the way where we're going to have to laugh at ourselves and say, this doesn't look or feel like what we dreamed about. What were we thinking? Well, I will tell you in those moments, we were thinking that the possibility of joy merited a good faith effort to plan for and seek it. That's what UU congregations do. They plan for and seek joy, along with other things like justice and beauty. In our first reading, the poet Mary Oliver has a spiritual question about the nature of all living things, and even some that aren't, like all the little stones sitting alone in the moonlight. If every human has a soul, she asks, doesn't each living thing have one as well, all the non-human living things? In fact, doesn't each little stone alone in the moonlight have a soul? But this individuality that she celebrates isn't the end of the inquiry for me. If souls exist, what about collective forms of soulfulness in stones, animals, grasses, and anything else sitting together in the moonlight, not alone, together in the moonlight and daylight, especially humans sitting together and eating together, crying together, working together, praying together for a world that only they can imagine collectively. Humans coming together to invest their lives in bending the universe toward goodness, beauty, and joy. Congregations of humans, like CVUUS. In our Time for All Ages today, our wonderful director of religious exploration, Poppy, once again faced a dilemma familiar to her UU colleagues all around the country. Virtually no children are attending online worship services, which means that a very high percentage of our families with such children are also absent from the gathering. None of their parents are here as well, usually. Families are zoomed out by Sunday. We know from talking to them that most of them are looking forward to resumption of live church, quote, as usual, once the pandemic has been tamed. Poppy works in other ways to stay in touch with these families. But for now, who does she talk to on Sunday morning? She talks to the grown-ups and the grandparents. She's faithfully showing the rest of you Sunday after Sunday the kind of spiritual teachings CVUUS provides to the young families whenever it can and in whatever way it can. What does it mean to support CVUUS? It means you take seriously the value of joining with others to keep such teachings alive in Addison County. We take seriously the need for a congregation like this one to be here, nurturing open hearts and minds for people of all ages as children grow and when newcomers arrive. Now, today's tale about stewardship of the Tree of Life was created by Reverend Lynn Gardner, which Poppy knew from her research, and her co-minister, her partner, Wendy Bartell, of the UU congregation in Schenectady, which I don't think Poppy knew. What does it mean to support CVUUS? It means you are part of a unique movement of more than 1,000 UU congregations that was a pioneer in making room for LGBTQ ministers in its pulpits. It means you belong to a congregation welcoming these and other marginalized people into the unique soulfulness of congregational life based on mutual affection and values, not religious dogma about the nature of God, the nature of humans, the nature of creation, or death, or even truth. I could go on in this vein for quite a while. Supporting CVUUS is testimony that you are a person who believes we need institutions that help us practice working across spiritual dividing lines, as I do for you with the Middlebury Area Clergy Association. It means you want Addison County to see clearly that our community of diverse faiths can be a wellspring of living water for groups organizing around social justice issues, support for the arts, and in times of crisis, public protest or mourning. It's CVUUS that other people come to for help with getting permits and insurance when they want to do a demonstration on the downtown bridges or green. Our donation this morning to the Vermont Abenaki Artists Association speaks both to social justice and the arts. And it's not an accident that Esther Thomas, so newly arrived in town, found such deep and effective support within this congregation for her successful campaign to gain a place on the select board this week. By now, some of you may be getting nervous. He's got to say something about money, right? Isn't that what the pledge drive is all about? Probably Carl and Brett are getting the most nervous since they're responsible for collecting the pledges. Well, accumulating pledges of enough money to create the budget we want for next year, it's important. It's true that the pledge drive does ask you to think generously about where we want to head in the coming year and what it's likely to cost financially. I don't want to downplay the value to CVUUS in having those members and friends who are well off financially give liberally. But my job as minister is also to remind you that money is not necessarily the key to stewardship, which is an old English word which literally means to take care of the part of your home in which you shelter domestic animals, the basis for most people's survival for centuries and centuries. You could call stewardship of CVUUS an example of everything that goes into taking care of your tree of life, if you want to think of Poppy's story. I want to also call your attention to the biblical tale of the Good Samaritan. It's one that most people have heard. It's probably the best known tale in the whole Bible. People aren't really up with all of the details, though. So let me just quickly run through it. A Jewish lawyer asked Jesus what is needed to gain eternal life. And Jesus asked him what the Jewish traditions teach. The lawyer responds that we are to love God with all our heart, soul, strength, and mind, and our neighbors as we love ourselves. And Jesus says, bingo. No, he doesn't say bingo. He says, correct. But then the lawyer asks, who is included in the term neighbor? The implication is that he is wondering if only his fellow Jews are his true neighbors. And Jesus responds with a story of a presumably Jewish man, given the road that he was traveling on from Jerusalem to Jericho, who was attacked by robbers and left half dead. He was passed by a Jewish priest and a slightly lower ranked Jewish man who did not stop to render aid. Each presumably had their reasons. For instance, the priest may have been rushing to pressing duties. And on that road, both of them may have feared that the apparently robbed man was a decoy to lure them into a trap. At any rate, it is a Samaritan, a foreigner in terms of the story, who not only stops to aid the man, but takes him to an inn to be fed and cared for. And he also pays for the man to stay there until he returns to check on his welfare. Jesus then asks the lawyer, who is the victim's neighbor? This is, excuse me, this is clearly a story teaching. This is clearly a story teaching that a loving God values those who practice compassion without regard to whether they are Jews, his chosen people. Money is only part of the compassion equation. First, there is the Samaritan's attention and empathy. Then there is the step to arrange for more help than the Samaritan alone can give. And then there is more attention to the outcome when he comes back to see what's happened. The Samaritan is showing stewardship of the victim's problem, not just compassion through financial support. Similarly, stewardship of this congregation involves financial support, but it also calls on us to share time and all manner of talents in tending our tree of life. And some of these are so subtle, you might not even realize you're tending the tree of life. It might just be thinking and passing about someone from the congregation you haven't seen in a while and calling to see how they're doing. Our pledge drive is not just a request for financial commitment, but a practice of exploring everything we need for CVUUS to thrive. For that reason, I hope that no one actually makes their pledge without first having a conversation with a fellow congregant or group of congregants about what participating in the life of CVUUS means to you. And this could have changed over time. What it meant to you when you were 20 years younger than you are today might be very different than what it means to you now, but it still means something. How are your non-financial gifts to the congregation's mission being given and received? What would you hope to see? Where would you hope to see more resources deployed, even if you aren't in a position to finance them or in a position to participate in whatever it is that you dream of for us? What do you love about CVUUS? What troubles you? What are your dreams for the congregation? And what do you understand the congregation's dreams to be for you? One thing I love about this year's pledge drive is its Bound for Joy theme. Now, I know it's a bit old-fashioned to climb aboard the metaphor of the train in the age of the electric car, air travel, and the internet. And maybe it's even a little bit weird to embrace the image of the train at a time when downtown Middlebury is yet to recover from the crippling economic impact of rebuilding rail bridges. But joy and sorrow are often mixed. We see that today because the joy we will have celebrating Bob Johnson's life together springs from the sorrow of his death this morning. But the idea that our train is bound for joy over the horizon works especially well for us this year. It works especially well for our pledge drive because of the word bound. The root word for religion itself relates to being bound together in the sense of intertwined in pursuit of responding to whatever is sacred in our lives. I like thinking of us in both senses of bound for joy this year, headed for it and connected securely in moving toward it effectively because we are a congregation, not just a collection of individuals. I truly believe that we are bound for more joy as the pandemic winds down to manageable levels. The budget we will be putting together for the coming year needs to invest in that vision. That starts with a robust pledge campaign. Generous pledging is the best affirmation possible that we will have enough income, not just to survive the pandemic as a congregation, but to emerge as a wiser, more compassionate, more courageous congregation than we already were when the pandemic arrived. A congregation that finds more ways to communicate, more ways to make its good message felt in the world. How exciting the months to come will be if we all grab our seats on that train. As another song says, you don't need a ticket, you just climb aboard. The many forms of commitment you make to living out your connection to UU values with the rest of us, both through your pledge, through your presence, through your taking time during the day just to think about us, through your dropping the note of concern to someone you haven't seen in a while, to your sending a little email pointing out something you know someone in the congregation will love or asking their questions about it. May it be so. May all of these be ways that we get on board the train, and may it start with our pledge. Blessed be and amen.
Go.
Macaulay for this beautiful music. As you go forth this week, I want to invite you to think about the pandemic as an invitation to think more deeply about collective humans. Humans as crowds, humans as businesses, humans as teams. There are so many different collective nouns for us, and some of them make us better, some of them make us worse. Humans can be mobs. One of the most unique collective nouns there is for humans, one of the most creative, one of the most committed over time, one of the most joyful, I believe, is the congregation. So go forth and give yourself some time to think about how special it is that you have found this congregation and you are a part of it, and the great vistas of connection that opens to you. Blessed be and amen.